Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today we're going to be going over the entirety of Bruce Arians' press conference that he gave on February 25th at the 2020 NFL Combine. So guys, we're not going to waste any time. I'm not going to do a jump cut here. Let's just get right into talking about all of the stuff that Bruce Arians said about a long list of topics. Now, before we start talking about those said topics, I do want to say shout out to all the people who gave out all of these quotes on Twitter and in articles and things along those lines. Seriously, thank you so much to those people. These people include Greg Auman from The Athletic, Rick Stroud from the Tampa Bay Times, the entirety of Pewter Report at pewterreport.com, Scott Smith of Buccaneers.com, Trevor Sikkema of the Draft Network, and finally John Ledyard of pewterreport.com as well. Seriously, those guys did such a phenomenal job, not just with Bruce Arians' press conference, but also with Jason Light's press conference as well, that I do have notes on that as well. And we will be talking about those in a little bit. Now, as you guys can see, I've went ahead and I've sorted these by each topic that Bruce Arians covered, and I went ahead and divided them up, and I made my own notes about my thoughts and interpretations from everything that Bruce Arians said. But we're not going to start here on the first page. No, we're actually going to go ahead and flip the page because we're going to get started with the Jameis Winston stuff. Now, I already talked about the conversation that Bruce Arians had with Andrew Siciliano after this press conference, but I still feel like the stuff that he said in this press conference about Jameis Winston was pretty telling as well. So let's get started with this. Bruce Arians says some things can be corrected about Jameis Winston, but he feels fine with him. He has not made any contact with Winston in the offseason. I just like working with winners, Bruce Arians said of the quarterback position. It's hard to know until you get them, he said. Says he would have liked to seen fewer mistakes the last 3 to 4 games from Winston. Bruce Arians says Jameis Winston progressed during the 2019 season, would have liked to have seen some of the mistakes in the last 4 weeks erased by then, but can still be worked on. Asked directly if Jameis Winston is his guy moving forward, Bruce Arians remains coy with this quote, "He could be." Now, going a little bit deeper into that, Arians, when do we need to make a decision on Jameis? When I know who else is available. Bruce Arians then goes on to that he says he hasn't made that decision on whether to use a tag on Jameis Winston. When will he know? When we know who else is available? We should know by next week. Arians says Winston remains an unknown because of his ups and downs. Can we win with Jameis? Hell yeah. Now, Arians on Winston and why it's still uncertain about his future. December wasn't what I wanted to see. Arians said they got a lot of clarity in looking back at all of Winston's interceptions this year. He wouldn't put a number on how many were Winston's fault. That is another very interesting point to make right there. Arians weighing on the good and bad of Jameis Winston. 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns is awesome. 30 interceptions. Can we win with Jameis? Hell yeah. There's no doubt. As a head coach, you have to decide, is there a better option? Arians remains confident he'll have Shaq Barrett back for 2020, so hey, that's always good, whether on a tag or extension. Said that's in contrast to what he said about Jameis Winston. One is the sack leader, they're hard to find. The other is an unknown quantity still to me. Okay. And then it does talk about the certain stuff that I made a note here about the NFL Network at the end, where Bruce Arians on the NFL Network that he knows what he's doing at the quarterback position. Jameis Winston doesn't know, but the team knows. Arians said the team is doing due diligence on door number 2. We can win with Jameis. I know that, Arians says. So what were my notes off of everything that I just read to you guys from that Bruce Arians presser revolving around Jameis Winston? Well, the first thing, Bruce Arians feels fine with Jameis Winston despite certain struggles last season, which that makes a lot of sense. Bruce Arians, he defended Jameis Winston a whole heck of a lot, but admittedly, a lot of people have made the point of kind of those last few weeks of the year, Bruce seemed to stop doing that a little bit more, which was a very, very interesting thing, and we kind of get a little bit more light on that as he did say that December wasn't what he wanted to see from Jameis Winston, so we can kind of see why, that praise and that defense of Jameis Winston stopped a little bit in December. But looking a little bit deeper into it, Bruce enjoys working with winners, and the last month of the season from Jameis was disappointing to Bruce. Okay, that makes sense. He just flat out said that in the press conference. So could Jameis be his guy? He could be. Now, that's definitely him being coy, being on the fence. I don't know if that's a negotiation tactic. We'll just have to wait and see. But, he still is opening up the door as Jameis Winston could still be the guy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which a lot of us still believe that. who still wants to see who is going to be available through all options before making a tag decision on Jameis. Now, this is really interesting, and I posed this question to you guys because I've talked to a lot of people about these pressers already, and the talk that we've been talking about has been, the Buccaneers are talking about using the franchise tag on Jameis Winston. Well, what about Shaq Barrett? They very well may have to use the tag on him as well, and if they use the franchise tag on Jameis Winston, or on Shaq Barrett, I don't know if Jameis Winston would be coming back to this team. That is definitely a very interesting type of possibility scenario there, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about that down in the comment section below. If Shaq Barrett does get the franchise tag rather than Jameis Winston, do you think that Jameis Winston is going to be back with this team? Let me know what you think down in the comment section below on that. But he still thinks that Jameis Winston is an unknown, but he does feel confident that they can win with Jameis, which, he's been saying that not just in the press conference, but also in the Andrew Siciliano conversation as well. Really interesting that he calls Jameis Winston an unknown. That, to me, sounds like a little bit of an insult to Jameis Winston. If I was Jameis Winston, that might, rub me the wrong way a little bit, considering, Bruce Arians was supposed to be Jameis Winston's guy. He was supposed to have his back, and now he's calling him an unknown. I know some people have kind of pointed to this and said, it's a negotiating tactic, but calling your quarterback an unknown is a little bit of a weird negotiating tactic to me. Now, Bruce did get some clarity on Jameis Winston's interceptions and agrees that there is a lot of good and a lot of bad with Winston this past season, which, he's basically talking like one of us at this point, one of the fans, basically by saying, 33 touchdowns, 5,000 yards, that's good, but man, 30 interceptions, that's really stuff that we all say as fans. So that was just kind of interesting to me. I don't know if he's trolling at that point. I don't know if he's just messing around, but it was still an interesting little nugget nonetheless. Confident in bringing back Shaq Barrett because he is the sack leader, which, we've all known that. He has been confident in bringing back Shaq Barrett since all the way back in essentially October, but not so much with Jameis Winston because he's still an unknown, which that, again, he says it again. Jameis Winston is still an unknown quantity to me. That doesn't instill a lot of confidence in Jameis Winston, okay? And I will talk more about, Jameis Winston and their confidence in him in Jason Light presser, I guess I should say. And there is some good nuggets here from Bruce Arians. They can win from Jameis Winston. He still could be the guy, but hearing a term like unknown be thrown around when you're talking about a potential franchise quarterback could be smoke and mirrors, could be a negotiating tactic, whatever you want to call it, but that word unknown when describing Jameis Winston after you had a whole season with him, and you really put a lot of eggs into that basket, essentially all the eggs into the Jameis Winston basket to try and see if he's your franchise guy, to still say that he's unknown is a little bit, doesn't sit well with me too much. Now that we've got the big old Jameis Winston stuff out of the way, I'm actually going back to the first page here because Bruce Arians did talk about some of the quarterback options at the Combine and in free agency, and it goes as follows. Bruce Arians says he's evaluating all the quarterback options, says it's fun getting back into evaluating quarterbacks because he's done it for so long. Bruce Arians says you really don't know who is going to be on the market until the tags come out, so this falls in line with exactly what he said in the Andrew Siciliano conversation. And then you have 2 to 3 days. What is door number 2? He just keeps on alluding to door number 2. He will pretty much be doing that until a full decision is made. Bruce Arians says that Tom Brady is a guy that would make him pick up the phone and reach out if he was made available. Bruce Arians says that if you have a competition at quarterback, you probably don't have one, which again, we kind of already knew Bruce Arians' thoughts on that point of having a quarterback competition. Arians says he's aware other quarterbacks might be available beyond free agents, as Carson Palmer was in 2013. When the dominoes started falling, other guys are going to be on the market. How long? I don't want to drag it out very long. It's one thing I'd like to get done soon. We'll see. And this is the last one here. Asked for examples of NFL quarterbacks he'd pick up the phone for in free agency, Bruce Arians said Tom Brady. And then I believe Jenna Lane asked him, what about Phillip Rivers? And Bruce Arians said, Phillip Rivers is another guy, we'll see. Breaking down everything Bruce Arians said about the quarterback options real quick, he is having fun evaluating quarterbacks, makes sense. He is dubbed the quarterback whisperer after all, so makes sense that he would have fun evaluating quarterbacks in the draft and in free agency. The Buccaneers have actually met with some quarterbacks during the NFL Combine, and don't you worry guys, I'll be making a whole video about that and which players the Buccaneers have met with and what that means for the overall team's draft scenarios and whatnot, things along those lines. But Bruce is having a fun time evaluating quarterbacks, which is pretty interesting to me. So, it's definitely something that he's getting more involved when. It sounds like he's very involved in, really looking at all the options, which that's pretty interesting in of itself, but still really wants to see who is available after the tags go out around March 10th to 12th. As you guys know, the deadline for the franchise tags, I believe, was extended from March 10th to March 12th. But again, that kind of sweet spot of the 10th to the 12th of March, that's going to be when you see a lot of stuff happening, okay? Definitely a lot, especially if the Buccaneers franchise Shaq Barrett instead of Jameis. All hell's going to break loose. So definitely pay attention to March 10th, kind of as the start of this just boom explosion of moves. So pay attention to that. Tom Brady is somebody that Bruce would love to have, as would pretty much everybody else on this planet. It's Tom freaking Brady. And then finally, he doesn't want to drag out the evaluation process of looking at other quarterbacks too long, which makes me believe that any quarterback that the Buccaneers decide is going to be an upgrade from Jameis Winston would be in free agency, not in the draft. It definitely makes it seem like Bruce Arians, I don't want to drag this out too long. You don't have to drag it out too much longer because March 10th to 12th is coming, which means free agency is coming, which means if you want an upgrade, it seems like Bruce is probably going to pick it from the litter of guys in free agency, if he even thinks that there is an upgrade out there. Again, he, is definitely hot and cold in some situations with Jameis Winston. I know there was a lot of fluff talk in there as well, but, he said that, Jameis Winston's an unknown, but they can still win with him. But it seems like if Bruce does want to move on from Jameis Winston and find a new starting quarterback, it's going to be from the crop of guys in the free agency market. Next thing I want to move on to is Ronald Jones and other running backs that Bruce Arians talked about in this press conference. Now, this one is relatively short. The next thing I want to talk about is Ronald Jones and other running backs that Bruce Arians mentioned in his press conference. Now, Bucs head coach Bruce Arians said, "I don't think there's any doubt that Ronald Jones can be a running back for them who can carry a heavy workload." He also then goes on to say, Bruce Arians says that he likes Ronald Jones, TJ Logan, and Dare Ogunbowale, but there is always room for another young guy to enter that room. So, a couple of notes I wrote down here. He didn't mention Peyton Barber at all. He mentioned Ronald Jones, TJ Logan, and Dare Ogunbowale. Those are the three guys. And I know Bruce Arians, he, has very much enjoyed Ronald Jones. He loves TJ Logan, and he has had his, very good moments with Dare Ogunbowale, especially in preseason. I mean, the guy had a captain's patch, for goodness sake. So those guys he mentioned. Not Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber is scheduled to be a free agent for this offseason, and it seems like the writing's on the wall. Peyton Barber might have to be looking for a new team this offseason, just for the matter of he didn't mention him at all. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, he's an impending free agent. He mentioned Jameis Winston a lot, and I know he was asked direct questions about that, but he was asked about the running backs too. He could have mentioned Peyton Barber, and he didn't. So that was really interesting to me. Peyton Barber, will he be leaving the team? I mean, just looking at the paper, seems like it is certainly very, very possible. The Buccaneers could, seemingly add another young running back either through free agency or through the draft. But the big thing for me is how much confidence that Bruce Arians said he has in Ronald Jones to carry a heavy workload for this team, which is exactly what I want. So, hey, I'm down for that. And I know some people have said, the Bucs should draft a running back. The Buccaneers should add a running back in free agency. And I've been pounding the wall. The Buccaneers don't need to add a running back this offseason. Let me tweak that a little bit. I don't think the Buccaneers need to add a starting caliber running back this offseason, okay? Because you have one. It's Ronald Jones. If you want to add a backup, say, in the NFL draft in the later rounds, or add a backup in free agency, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. But I still think Ronald Jones should have 75 to 80% of the carries that are being given to the Buccaneers group of running backs. I still believe that 100%, and I will not change my mind on that throughout the entirety of the offseason. So there it is. Bruce Arians instilled a lot of confidence in Ronald Jones. Didn't mention Peyton Barber, so it seems like a new backup running back could be coming to the team. Or, hey, we could see an increased workload from TJ Logan and Dari Ogunbowale, which I love TJ Logan to death. I think he's an awesome player, so I would be happy to see TJ Logan get some more touches. But Ronald Jones, keep him as your heavy workload running back, darn it. Next thing we're going to talk about is the topic of wide receiver and tight end, as well as injury updates for the team. Now, Bruce Arians says both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, who finished the 2019 season on the IR with hamstring injuries, have cleared their physicals. All right, good stuff. Asked about tight end Anthony Auclair, a restricted free agent, Arians said he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league and a priority for the team moving forward. Sounds like he'll be tendered. Arians then said he was hoping safety Justin Evans could be healthy for April 1st, but said now it looks more like June 1st. Coming off multiple foot surgeries, didn't play at all in 2019. Arians on his wide receiver depth. We would love to have Brashad back because he fits what we're looking for, but not at a price when you have all these receivers in the draft. Bruce Arians on this year's draft strengths. Wide receivers. Oh my god, there's probably 40. You're going to find every shape, size. It's a beauty contest. Whatever you like, tall, fast, short, fast, they're all here. Now, a couple of things to note. First things first, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are healthy and should be good to go for 2020. We all knew that was probably going to happen. It was really, the hamstring injuries were only things that were going to harm them for a couple of weeks. It's just unfortunate that it really happened at the worst times because it knocked both those guys out of the end of the regular season and knocked them out of the Pro Bowl as well. But they'll definitely be good to go for 2020. We all knew that was going to be a thing. Anthony Auclair is going to be back. That's pretty much confirmed. Bruce says he's the best blocking, one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, and it should be really good. He could be a big part of the offense for 2020, which could push out a guy like Cameron Brate from this roster, and we will talk about that whenever we mention the Jason Light press conference in the next video, because he did have some comments about O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, but Anthony Auclair could be seeing a very large increased role come next season. He could potentially even be a semi-starter for this team in 2 tight end sets because of how good he is at blocking. Another thing I want to point out, Justin Evans continues to struggle with his recovery from the injuries that he's suffered, which is unfortunate. Really makes me think that they aren't having a lot of hope in Justin Evans right now in terms of coming back fully healthy and being able to stay healthy, which is really, really unfortunate. And there was, again, some more comments that Jason Light made in his press conference that we will talk about, but this safety room is definitely a very different safety room from whenever Justin Evans left it with his injuries. He's coming back now. There's a lot of new, young, fresh faces in there, and Justin Evans, he's still fresh himself. He's still a very young guy in his mid to early 20s, but he could see himself getting pushed, if not down the depth chart, potentially off the roster completely if he doesn't eventually get healthy and get back out there and show Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles and the defensive coaching staff what he can do for this team. So that was definitely an interesting thing to note. Another thing, BA would love to have Perriman back, as would I, as well as I'm sure a lot of you guys as well, but it will all depend on the price. I know a lot of people have been debating Brashad Perriman's price tag now for weeks and weeks, ever since the season ended, basically. And it seems like if the price tag's too high, the Bucs are willing to let him move on because there's so many good wide receivers in this draft. Bruce Arians was just like, dude, the wide receivers are so freaking good. And it seems like the Buccaneers could very well draft another wide receiver in this draft and really help out, not with just replacing Brashad Perriman if he goes into free agency. They could also do that with a free agent signing as well, but also helping out some of that depth. I talked about this a lot during the second half of the season, how weak I felt the Buccaneers' back half of the wide receiver depth chart was. They were injury riddled, and they were just guys who weren't clicking as well with Jameis Winston as, say, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Brashad Perriman. Scotty Miller, he did some good things a little bit, but he did have some injuries. Justin Watson struggled in a handful of times during the second half of the season, which was unfortunate to see. So the Buccaneers could definitely stand to add another wide receiver, to be it through free agency or definitely through the draft, and it seems like they might be leaning towards that way. Next quick thing I want to talk about, Bruce Arians says that the offensive tackle position is somewhere that he's looked at a lot entering the combine, adds that it's a deep and talented group this year. And the notes that I essentially wrote on that were, that's not exactly a great thing moving forward for Donovan Smith and DeMar Dotson. Now, DeMar Dotson, he's going to retire probably by the end of next season. We all expect that, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be happening. So they need to draft a replacement for DeMar Dotson, probably this year, definitely. But Donovan Smith, his situation is a little bit more interesting. He does have an out from his contract, I believe, at the end of this upcoming season. So definitely could see 2 new tackles potentially for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the future. Now, I'm not saying they're going to draft a tackle round 1 and round 2 and say, okay, here's our new tackles. But I'm saying, they could draft a replacement for DeMar Dotson this year, or at least a solid, capable backup in the 4th, 5th round, something along those lines. But, I wouldn't put it past if they at least look and say, okay, maybe we take somebody right now who not only could be a potential DeMar Dotson replacement, but could potentially replace Donovan Smith as well. So both those guys, I feel like they're both futures are a little bit in jeopardy. In the case of DeMar Dotson, he's probably just going to retire at the end of next year. But in the case of Donovan Smith, there's going to be an out in his contract coming out soon. So we'll see what happens with that situation. Now we can start talking about the defensive free agents. Bruce Arians says that the Bucs' ability to get their defensive free agents back will drive the direction of their draft. Arians says Shaq Barrett is not a one-hit wonder. You don't get 19.5 sacks if you're a one-hit wonder. Bruce Arians says that they've had good talks with their defensive free agents and hope to get deals done soon. Okay, so that's a very good thing to note. Bruce Arians says talks with the Bucs defensive free agents are going well, and he does think it's possible to re-sign all 3 of Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Ndamukong Suh. Arians on his cornerbacks, I love it. We're young, we're talented. All those kids finished the season playing extremely well. I think that's a really solid position for us for a long time. Obviously, signing their own defensive guys will have a huge effect on what they do in the draft. Makes a lot of sense. If you have a really, really big hole in the defense, that's going to have to be something that you have to address. So it makes sense that the Buccaneers would want to get back as many of their own guys as possible. Arians is still confident in Shaq, and not only will he be back, but he will still be amazing next season and for future seasons with the team as well. Love it. I absolutely love it. And I agree 100%, Bruce Arians. So we're still on the same page with that. He expects possible deals to get done soon, so definitely keep an eye on your social media feeds and the Bucs news and stuff along those lines, because it sounds like new deals could be coming very, very soon for the Buccaneers defensive free agents, which is always a very, very good thing to hear. Still thinks that the Bucs can re-sign, Shaq Barrett, JPP, and Ndamukong Suh, all of those guys. He didn't mention Carl Nassib, though, which was really interesting to me. He didn't mention Carl Nassib. Now, I don't know if the question was, pointedly directed of, do you think that you can re-sign Suh, JPP, and Shaq Barrett? Because if it was asked like that and he says yes, then, of course he didn't mention Carl Nassib. Carl Nassib wasn't mentioned in the question. But if it was a scenario of, do you think that you can re-sign all your defensive free agents? Yeah, I think we can re-sign JPP, Shaq Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh. And then he just, didn't mention Carl Nassib. That, to me, would kind of lead, kind of like a similar situation to what he was saying about the running back situation of, Carl Nassib's kind of that odd man out. He wasn't mentioned. He might not be coming back. So that was definitely something to keep an eye on. And then finally, he loves the cornerbacks and he feels that they're set for a while. We all knew that. I mean, this secondary group is going to be good for a decent amount of years. I really hope that we can keep all these guys long term. It's going to be tough, but in a couple of years. But I'm fingers crossed that the Buccaneers can do it. But yeah, everything seems good on the defensive free agents front. And guys, that's pretty much it for everything that Bruce Arians said in his presser. There was some small stuff too about what he looks for in potential draft picks and things along those lines, and why he came back to coaching, which again, he came back for the young team, he said, his friend Jason Light, the general manager, and he really enjoyed the Glazers, which I do want to point out is a little bit different from the answer he's given in the past, where he has mentioned a guy like Jameis Winston. He didn't mention it this time, which was very interesting thing to keep a note on there. But regardless, regardless, you know, that's pretty much everything I've got from Bruce Arians' 2020 NFL Combine presser. I'm sure I'll have plenty of videos to make based off of everything that was said here. But guys, let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about everything that Bruce Arians said? And give me your interpretations of what some of these answers might mean. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. I will see you in the Jason Light quotes from the Combine video. But until the next video or the next live stream, see you guys in the next one. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.